Hey loggers, I want to thank you for your support so far. Together we can build a wonderful community and expand this creepy universe even further. Help me reach 500 subscribers. Something very big is coming. Now without further ado, when we reach 500, the next door opens. What waits beyond is something I can't face alone. Join the logs. Stay aware. Stay afraid. Let's dive into today's story. I never wanted to work with children, but the apprenticeship was a requirement. Credits I needed, boxes I had to tick to keep moving forward. The kindergarten was small, tucked at the edge of the town like it didn't quite belong. It had white walls, pastel decorations, faded drawings of suns and flowers pinned up in the hall. But none of that really stuck in my memory. What I remember is him. His name was Elias, 4 years old, quiet, too quiet. The other children shrieked and ran, tripped and laughed. Elias sat alone, always alone, with paper and crayons. The teachers didn't complain. He wasn't disruptive, didn't throw fits, never caused trouble. But his drawings were wrong. Not just advanced for a child, though they were. Too symmetrical, too deliberate. He drew shapes I didn't have names for, angles that made my eyes hurt if I stared too long, constellations that didn't exist, symbols that made the air feel heavy. The first time I noticed, I laughed it off. He slid a sheet across the table to me, circles within circles, but not concentric, more like layered spirals collapsing inward. I asked him what it was. He looked up at me with those pale, still eyes and said, "It's where you go when you're done crying." The words stuck in me like splinters. I didn't tell the teachers. I told myself kids say strange things all the time, that his words meant nothing. But Elias never smiled, never frowned, never changed. His face was too calm, too unchildlike. He just kept drawing. At night, I began to dream. Not normal dreams, long, wide spaces of nothing, blank fields of white where I walked without shadows. The silence was enormous, crushing, until I thought I could hear my own blood. And far ahead, always, was something. A figure, tall, endless, hollow. It had no face, no features, only the outline of a body made of black glass that shimmered with stars. It never moved, but somehow I knew it was looking at me. I'd wake up sweating, my chest tight, my ears ringing. And every morning, Elias would be there in class, sitting at the little table, drawing the same shapes I had seen in my dream. It grew worse the night I stayed late. I was helping clean up after an event, folding paper, wiping tables, when I noticed Elias's bag. He'd forgotten it. I thought I should check for anything important before leaving it for lost and found. Inside was a sketchbook. The drawings weren't just child scribbles. They were plans. Pages filled with diagrams, glyphs, impossible equations. Whole languages, written in a script that spiraled across the page like a whirlpool. And in the center of one page, a figure. A towering silhouette made of stars and glass. Exactly the figure from my dream. At midnight that night, I woke again in the blank white field. But this time it wasn't empty. Shapes moved at the edges of my vision, like Elias's drawings peeled themselves off the paper and crawled into the void. Creatures with too many arms, heads that stretched upward like broken towers, mouths opening wider than silence itself. They didn't touch me. They only circled, watching. And in the distance, the tall figure stirred for the first time. It raised its arm, slowly, and I felt it, a hand on my head, though it was far away, a touch like cold water, comforting, crushing. It whispered inside me, not in sound, but in the collapse of all sound. Cry if you must. Every tear is a step closer. I woke screaming. My pillow was wet, but not with sweat. My cheeks were wet as though I had been weeping for hours. When I went in the next morning, Elias was already at the table, sketching carefully with his stubby crayon. He slid the paper to me as I passed. It was me, asleep, tears soaking my face. And behind me, the figure, towering, black, star-filled, its hand pressed to my head. "Don't be sad," Elias whispered. "It only hurts the first time." I stopped sleeping for 3 days. Coffee, energy drinks, cold showers. I dragged myself through the mornings, trembling and hollow-eyed, just to avoid the moment when my head hit the pillow and I was swallowed again by that white expanse. It didn't matter. Exhaustion is a gravity stronger than fear. On the 4th night, I closed my eyes for what I thought was a second, and the void took me instantly. But it was different, not empty. I wasn't alone this time. There was a child ahead of me. Little Anna, curly-haired, red-ribboned, the loudest in class, the one who sang off-key until the teachers begged her to hush. She stood barefoot in the blankness, clutching her stuffed rabbit against her chest, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. Her tears dripped onto the white floor and spread like cracks in glass. I ran to her, tried to take her hand. "Anna, it's just a dream. Wake up, you have to wake up." She didn't answer me, couldn't hear me. Her body trembled like she was already half gone. Then the air split. The tall figure emerged step by slow step, vast and formless, more suggestion than flesh, a blackness filled with stars. Its edges shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. It lowered itself, kneeling to her level, and its massive hand cupped her head. The crying stopped instantly. Anna went still, her tears drying, her eyes wide. She smiled faintly, as if she had finally found peace, and then she simply folded, not collapsed, folded inward like paper, her body flattening into the void until nothing was left but the rabbit lying on the white floor. The figure straightened, its faceless head turned toward me, and though it had no mouth, I felt the words in my teeth, in my skull, in the marrow of my bones. First step. I woke with a scream so loud I thought my throat had torn open. My sheets were soaked. My hands shook so violently I dropped my phone when I tried to check the time. It was exactly midnight. The next morning, Anna didn't come to class. The teachers said her parents had called in. "Fever," they said. "She's resting." But when I asked Elias about her, he looked up from his sketchbook and said, "She's finished crying. She's gone where it's quiet." I snatched the paper from him, furious, terrified. He had drawn Anna, not alive, not smiling, just the outline of her, flat and thin, lying in a field of white with nothing around her but her stuffed rabbit. I wanted to scream at him, demand how he knew. But Elias just watched me with those pale, ancient eyes. Eyes that had never belonged to a child. That night, I didn't even try to fight sleep. I set an alarm, left the lights on, but none of it mattered. Midnight came, and with it, the white void. This time I wasn't far from the figure. It was waiting for me, standing tall, its hand outstretched like it had been reaching for me long before I arrived. Around its feet were shapes half-formed, shadows of children curled and sobbing, their bodies already starting to blur into the blankness. The figure bent low, voice tearing through me again. Second step is waiting. 7 before the event horizon. 7 before you cross. The ground beneath me shifted, sloping downward into an unseen abyss. I stumbled, felt myself sliding. My tears burned hot, spilling without reason, and as they touched the ground they sank, disappearing as though consumed by something beneath the surface. I realized then what it meant. The tears weren't comfort. They were weight. Each one pulled me closer to the singularity. And Elias, with his crayons and impossible geometry, wasn't drawing nightmares. He was mapping the descent. When I woke, the clock read 12:08. On my desk, where I had left nothing, lay one of Elias's drawings. Fresh, the crayon wax still smudging. It was me, standing at the edge of a black pit, my tears falling into it like stones. The kindergarten grew quieter each day. At first it was subtle. One child out sick, another absent for family reasons. The teachers shrugged, joked about flu season, but I knew better. I saw the pattern. The absences always followed the midnight dreams. Each child who appeared in that white void never returned to class again. By the end of the week, 5 seats were empty. The teachers whispered in the staff room, tried to contact parents, but calls went unanswered. Mail bounced back. It was as though those children had never existed at all. Their drawings, their coats, their names on cubbies, gone, erased like chalk from a board. Even the other kids didn't seem to remember. I remembered. I carried the weight of every single one. And Elias sat at his little table, drawing, always drawing. His sketches grew more elaborate now, not just shapes and voids, but steps, towers spiraling downward into nothing. 7 platforms stacked like ribs of a colossal skeleton. On each step, tiny figures curled into themselves, tears dripping into cracks that led deeper. When I confronted him snatching the paper from his hand, he looked at me like I was a child and he was the teacher. "Don't worry," he said. "It's only the first descent. There are 7, plenty of time before the horizon." "Why are you doing this?" I hissed. Too loud, the other kids turning their heads. He blinked. "I don't make it happen. I only open the way. Crying does the rest." That night, the dream didn't wait until midnight. I fell into it as soon as my eyes closed. The void was no longer endless white. Now it sloped downward, vast stairs of nothing stretching toward a black circle so far below I couldn't tell if it was small or infinite. On the first step lay Anna, flat and thin, her rabbit beside her. On the second step, 2 2 other children curled together, their shapes blurring at the edges. The figure stood in the center, taller than mountains, head bent toward me. Its body was absence, its veins filled with starlight. It reached toward me again, and though I backed away, the gravity of its hand tugged at the tears in my eyes. I could feel them straining to fall, to join the others, to drag me down to the next step. Each tear is a tether, the voice said without sound. Every grief unfastens you from the living. Do not resist. It is gentler this way. Cry and be welcomed. I screamed into the void, begged the children to wake, to fight, but they didn't even hear me. They were already folded into themselves, drifting, dissolving. I woke with my pillow soaked again, but this time, something else lay beside me. Elias's sketchbook. I hadn't brought it home. I hadn't touched it, yet there it was, resting on the sheets. I opened it with shaking hands. The page showed me, older, my face hollow, my eyes black and starless. I was standing on the 4th step of the descent, and behind me, Elias, not as a boy anymore, not even human. His head was a crown of black light, his eyes empty sockets that stretched into the void. The caption, written in a script that wasn't crayon but something burned into the paper, read, Guardian, Messenger, Child. When I stumbled into the kindergarten the next morning, 2 more seats were empty. The teachers whispered, looking frantic now, but the children didn't seem to notice at all. Only Elias met my gaze. He smiled faintly, the first smile I had ever seen on him, and whispered so only I could hear, Tonight you'll see the 3rd step. I didn't want to sleep. Every hour of daylight I clung to felt like stolen time, the last fragile barrier before midnight. But there is no bargaining with exhaustion. I tried sitting upright, lights on, music in my headphones. But the pull was stronger. My eyes closed without permission, and I was gone. The void welcomed me instantly. The stairs stretched further now, no longer a suggestion but a structure. 7 massive platforms of blank stone descending into the abyss. The black singularity at the bottom had grown. Its edges pulsed with faint light, warping the air around it, swallowing everything it touched. On the first 3 steps lay children I knew, Anna, Peter, Julia, their bodies curled, dissolving slowly into the surface. Their tears glistened like dew, rolling downward, absorbed by the void. On the 4th step, there was only a faint impression, a space waiting for me. The figure was closer now. It no longer towered at a distance, but stood only a few steps below, vast enough to fill the sky, yet near enough that I could see the hollows in its form. Skin of night stretched thin, with galaxies shivering beneath. Its faceless head tilted toward me as it extended its arm. Cry, the voice thrummed. Not sound, not words, but a pressure against my ribs, a vibration in my teeth. Tears are the first surrender. Surrender begins the crossing. I shook my head, though my eyes burned. The gravity of grief was unbearable. I thought of every absence in the classroom, every missing laugh, every crayon scribble erased from reality. The weight swelled inside me until my throat constricted, until my chest cracked, until I broke. A single tear slid free. The floor shifted beneath me. I stumbled forward, landing on the fourth step. The impression filled my place, my tether. The figure's hand rested on my head, enormous and cold, pressing me into stillness. My sobs turned silent. For a moment, an impossible moment, I felt peace. Not joy, not comfort, just peace, like the world had let go of me and I no longer had to hold anything together. But that peace was hollow, the calm of drowning. Far above, I heard something faint, a scratching sound, crayon on paper. I looked up. There, at the very lip of the void where the white field began, stood Elias, his small figure hunched over his sketchbook, hands steady, face calm. He wasn't looking at me. He never did. His head bowed, absorbed in his task, dragging impossible geometry into being. Every line he drew became form here. Every curve added weight to the descent. He did not command. He did not explain. He did not reveal. He only drew. And the void obeyed. The guardian's voice throbbed through me again, vibrating with finality. There are 7 steps. You have crossed the first. 6 remain. In the end, all return. None escape the horizon. I tried to scream. No sound came. My mouth opened and nothing left me but silence, as though the void had already claimed my voice. The guardian raised its head, faceless, vast, and I realized it wasn't looking at me. It never had been. Its attention was fixed on Elias, that small child at the rim of eternity, who continued to draw as if playtime would never end. Then the singularity pulsed. Once. Twice. A rhythm like a heartbeat. Each pulse pulled harder at me. Tugging threads I didn't know bound my soul. When I woke, it was 12:04 a.m. My pillow was wet again. My hands were cramped like I'd been gripping something in my sleep. On my bedside table lay a sheet of paper I hadn't left there, a crayon drawing, my own outline curled on the 4th step, tears dripping. At the bottom of the page, scrawled in a child's hand, were 3 words. See you soon.